The Houston Rockets traded to acquire Kevin Durant. The Spurs were in on that negotiations as well. So my question to you here, Clif, is did the Spurs miss out not making this move?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that, you see what the Rockets gave up, and it was probably a lot more than what the Spurs were willing to give up. I think that the Rockets understand that their time is now, that they finished as a 2 seed behind the Thunder, got upset, if you could call it an upset, to the Warriors there in the first round. I think the Rockets fully understand that, despite what happened in this postseason, that our time is now. And, with this group, we are far enough along in the process to where we can, to a degree, I'm not saying completely, to a degree, mortgage a lot of our future to win the championship now, to win it next year. I think that they look at this and they say, regardless of what happened in a, 7-game series or, a best-of-7 series against the Warriors, look at our body of work. We were second to the NBA champions, in terms of what we did over an 82-game stretch in the Western Conference. And I think that they're looking at this and they say, yeah, our time is now. Let's go get KD. Yes, he's 36, but we think that he can be the final piece of the puzzle to, at this point, get us over the hump, past the Thunder, and try to win our own championship.
Well, you look at the Rockets, and you said it great, that essentially they were missing that bona fide score, right? That insert score. I mean, and you could say that Jalen Green, he's still young, he's 23, he's developing, maybe he could one day become that guy, but he's not right now, and we don't know how long these championship windows really are for teams. Now, I don't like it for the Rockets in the sense they gave up a guy who added a little grit to their team in Dylan Brooks.
Right.
He'll make a great rotational piece in Phoenix for what it's worth, but you lose a little bit of that kind of gave that defensive edge that Houston had. So when I think about translating it to the Spurs and looking at what the trade chips were, is how do I look at what would Jalen Green, what would the number 10 overall pick and Dylan Brooks have equated to essentially on the Spurs roster? I said last week I would have been hesitant to give up a guy like Stephon Castle. Right. If you give away the number 2 pick, you give away the number 2 pick because it was a luxury ticket. Yeah. Like when you got it either way, because no one was expecting the Spurs to get the number 2 overall pick. And when it looked for like a moment that they won the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, right, everyone was taking a breath. Is like, is this thing rigged? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that, just like I said a moment ago, I think, of course, I spoke a lot from the Rockets' perspective. I think the Rockets have every reason to believe that they can get it done, and they can get it done now. And they made those moves to get that final piece. I think the Spurs probably understand that next year is probably not their year, that they're probably set up for a couple of years down the road. And they were not in a situation to where they would want to mortgage as much of their future perhaps as the Rockets or take as big of a risk.
Yes.
And I don't think that they need to. And I think from Kevin Durant's perspective, I think that it really works out for him. I said here last week that I didn't think the Spurs, because of where the Spurs were and where he is age-wise, career-wise, I didn't think that the Spurs were the best option for him. I felt like it would be someone like the Rockets or the Timberwolves. A team, you're talking about the Rockets being, the number 2, team in the Western Conference after the regular season this year, and then a Timberwolves franchise that's been to 2 consecutive Final Fours.
Yes.
So I felt like that the Rockets, between the two, the Rockets and the Spurs, because obviously the Timberwolves kind of, fell off the pace in this sweepstakes, but
I agree with it.
Yeah, I felt like that the Rockets were probably the best option for KD, and I felt like the Rockets would be the team to take the most risk because of where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, if KD landed on the Spurs, that team, maybe they're a 7 seed, a 6 seed. They're not going to be among the leaders. And certainly one of the big issues I would have had from it is when we talk about Wemby's growth, right? Do I want to keep taking touches away from him? Because, yes, adding Kevin Durant touches is a good thing for most teams, right?
Sure.
Especially the Rockets, where those touches were going to Jalen Green. But on the Spurs, I want to see what Wemby can do, especially coming off that injury or what health ailment, whatever you want to call it. I want to see him come back strong. And I think the big part of his development is not going to be with the ball taken out of his hands, which would have inevitably happened with Kevin Durant in that locker room. Not to mention, again, just the draft capital you would have had to give up. The best thing about making a Kevin Durant trade right now for the Spurs would have been, well, I could sell it to all the San Antonio voters as we talk about this new arena and what we're talking about for how much of your tax dollars are going to go towards that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that the Spurs have to sell anything to San Antonio voters. I mean that is. I mean, I've always
say that,
pictured,
but public sentiment hasn't reflected in the polls.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think ultimately those things tend to work themselves out. I mean, especially if you threaten to move or something like that. To me, just on the outside looking in, on the outside of Spurs fandom looking in, to me, the Spurs are to San Antonio what the Packers are to Green Bay. Not that San Antonio is as small of a market as Green Bay is, but the fact is it is a one major pro sports town, and it's not only a one major pro sport, but that franchise has been arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, in the last quarter century of this league. So I don't.
So you're saying the Spurs should send you out there to talk to voters ahead of this, like,
yes.
Hey, this is listen to this man. Hear all the good things we've done for your community.
Right.
But no,
just go threaten to move back to Seattle. Hey, we're going to move to Seattle. You always have that carrot out there.
I get it. When you see $300 million and you're like, I don't know, we could use some less potholes on our road.
Yeah, I would knowing the way San Antonio, knowing the love affair between San Antonio and the Spurs, even with the amount of time that's passed between championships, I have a hard time believing that the city of San Antonio or that area would pass on, the Spurs and pass on the new arena. But it's still crazy to me, though, that I like, and maybe this is just an example of just me just getting old and just. I mean, I can't remember whenever the AT&T Center, I still didn't know, it was the Frost Bank Center now, right? I remember whenever the Frost Bank Center, AT&T Center, all the things that it's been, I can't remember whenever that was built, and to me, it's a lot like being a Rangers fan. And
taxpayers are still paying that off.
Sure, right, yeah, and that's one thing to think about, but to me, it's a lot like being a Rangers fan and thinking, okay, yeah, I like the new roof of the new stadium, but but the ballpark in Arlington was only 20 years old. Why do we need a new one?
Hey, listen, I'm a sports fan. You don't have to sell me, but
I kind of like going out there and sweating at the old ballpark, 100 degrees.
Hey, a downtown San Antonio arena, that sounds cool to me, but
downtown arenas aren't really my thing. I like a place. I'm boring. I like a place out and away with parking. It's easy to get in, easy to get out of.
Speaking my language there, I need the parking. The parking is always the biggest thing for me.
I want a stadium out in the middle of nowhere with miles and miles of concrete around it.
Exactly.
It's going to look boring, but it's going to be easy in and easy out.
At least a good structure, something like that.
That's right.
For the day ones, the diehards, the first-timers, the old-timers. For all the rivalry matches, buzzer beaters, and come-from-behind miracles. It's not just stats and wins and losses, it's the moments, the shots you can't believe went in, the times you can't do anything but believe. And it's all streaming right here on your connected TV anytime on Fox Local.
The Sports Office, streaming anytime on Fox Local.